Well, Mark, I'd like to welcome you to the show. This is Mark Yoakum with Davis and Kielthau Attorneys at Law, joining us to give us some information about wills and what happens to people if they die and they don't have a will. So thank you for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So what does happen if somebody decides, well, I don't really need to have a will, I don't have any real assets, and they pass away and they die without a will? What happens to their assets?
People they don't even know decide what happens to their assets. People that don't know them. Basically, there are certain statutes in Wisconsin that dictate to a court what happens if you don't have a will and haven't made your wishes known. They'll look for close heirs first, and if they can't find close heirs, they'll look for more distant heirs. And all of that is decided by a judge that perhaps would never know you, doesn't know what you might have told your neighbor you want to have happen with your house or your stocks or whatever you might have.
So if I have a distant relative that I really don't particularly like and I don't have a will, my estate could end up going to that very person.
It could, sure.
Depending upon what the judges or the law dictates.
Or that distant relative could come in and challenge a closer relative for a share. And then you get into a big fight about what happens, and nobody wants to see that.
So obviously it's important. I mean, everybody dies, and unfortunately nobody likes to, well, not everybody likes to think about that, obviously, but I think, you know, to get it back to what we're talking about here for the Humane Society, bequest, wills, planned giving, and that's what we're kind of talking about, is planned giving. So what is planned giving? I mean, is that just a simple equation of just how people leave their assets, or?
The way I like to define planned giving is a structured philanthropy, basically. You're letting your wishes known in wills and trusts and other legal mechanisms to provide for charities of your choice with certain percentages of your estate or dollar amounts of your estate. And it's a way to do that ahead of time where there's a lot of thought into it. And if it's done right, it can't be challenged in court, and oftentimes that happens without even going to court.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, so it's obviously it's important.
But it is something that you can change. I mean, I think sometimes too people think, well, I have this document drawn up and now I've changed my mind, or I want to leave more, or I want to leave less. Can they change it?
Absolutely, sure. Now, there are a few trusts and that sort of thing that are permanent and cannot be changed, but those are the exception. The general rule is anytime you change your mind, it's just a matter of redoing some paperwork and making your wishes known and making it clear that the prior document is no longer in effect and you want the new trust or new will to take precedence.
Okay.
Kitty's chewing on your wire for sure. Sorry about that.
That's right. That won't happen for long, I don't think.
That's all right. I didn't want to hear
Cheryl
me talk
goes
anymore.
out, we'll know why. So.
I was taken out by a kitten.
Yeah.
So, so what are some of the things that I can do in my will?
You can make what are called direct bequests, which means you state directly in your will, I want the Humane Society to receive X amount of dollars, or a percentage of my total estate, or my AT&T stock, or my house in Vale, or...
So again, we're talking, it doesn't necessarily always have to be financial. It could be property, it could be assets.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can be stocks, bonds, cash, real property, which is real estate, land, buildings, or personal property, which is pretty much everything else.
Sure.
So would, let's say that I have an extensive coin collection, or I have a very expensive piece of jewelry. Is that something that I would want to include in there also?
Sure, you can. Or it can be part of your estate, or you can name things or describe things individually. For example, if you have a coin collection that you want to donate, you can say my coin collection is going to go to the Humane Society.
What about life insurance or retirement funds at all? I mean, we talked about that briefly earlier, but let's kind of discuss it again.
All of those are options. For example, if I take out a term life policy, I can name the Oshkosh Area Humane Society as the beneficiary of that policy. And if it's a 15-year term and I'm still alive at 15 years, it lapses, so you wouldn't get the benefit at that point. But Retirement, same way. It's just a matter of beneficiary designations. I think people have a misconception that you have to name an individual as a beneficiary, and you don't.
That's true.
You can
Yeah.
you can name organizations. You can name your estate as your beneficiary, or
Really?
sure.
Oh.
Yeah. For example, a lot of people will name their spouses as the primary beneficiary on retirement benefits. When they pass, the wife or husband gets the retirement benefits, but when the wife or husband passes, then they have named their estate as the second beneficiary, so
sure.
it all goes back into their estate, and then you're back to whatever the will says.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And the same with stocks and bonds. I know I have some old bonds, and I was told that if I gift those to the Humane Society, that's a way for me to avoid possible paying taxes on those, that the Humane Society can cash those. Is that?
There are a lot of ways to maximize the benefit for the Humane Society and minimize your tax liability, and in fact, get a tax benefit from doing that. I advise all of our clients to seek competent tax advice.
Well, and that was my next question. When should people go to, obviously, an attorney or a financial advisor, or is there some kind of perimeters, or is it all the time, or? how does it work?
I think they need to consult all those people when they're developing their estate plan, and the term estate plan is the umbrella for everything that we're talking about. It's planning ahead for what's going to happen to your estate or your assets when you pass.
Okay.
And people need to work with a competent estate planning attorney, and oftentimes with a financial planner and a CPA all at the same time. Sometimes you'll find attorneys that are also tax advisors or
Okay.
CPAs
Sure.
that you can bundle a couple of those in one
Okay.
person. But it's really a kind of a full service meeting, and oftentimes those folks will collaborate.
Well, and I
To
think it's
find out what works best for you and takes into consideration, like if you have, well, for me, it's just myself and my spouse, but a family that has children, or if they want to include, I think what we're trying to say here is when people are making a bequest or something to the Humane Society, we're not insinuating or asking people not to remember other family members in their will.
Sure.
But by giving up, but you're able to give a portion of your estate, like
a percentage, or
like Eileen said, like 1% or whatever. That even that 1% will help the Humane Society.
And percentages, I think, are better than dollar amounts, because when you die, you don't know what your estate's going to be worth.
that's really a good point. Yeah.
And if you designate $20,000 to the Humane Society, but you only have $40,000 in your estate, 20 goes to the Humane
Right.
Society, but then 20 perhaps is not as much as you wanted to leave to your children or grandchildren or whoever. If you do percentages, those obviously change
Sure.
with the value of the estate, and you don't have to worry about that
So it should
necessarily.
become either more or less.
Sure.
You may underestimate what you're able to give.
Right.
So
It-
by doing a percentage, you'd be able to, your gift may turn out to be more.
Could be, yeah, and depending on the economy and the stock market and what comprises your estate, sure.
So if you could advise our listeners to do anything, what would your advice to our listeners be regarding wills?
Find a competent estate planning attorney, and if they want to make any specific bequests to organizations outside of just leaving everything to their spouse or their children, which is the standard thing, also wrap in their accountant and a financial planner. And all those three individuals can work together and
Right.
achieve what they want. So there are no worries when they pass, and oftentimes it doesn't even go to court.
Right, and plan ahead.
Absolutely.
Plan ahead.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Mark, for being here today. We really appreciate the time that you've given us to hopefully make this a little bit clearer to our viewers. And thanks again.
That's my
Mark.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Well, Joni, I hope our viewers got a lot of information. I know that I learned a few things about different bequests
You
and
bet.
things that I can do to create a legacy.
Yes.
And really want to again thank Mark Yoakum and Eileen Conley-Kiesler for being here with us. And so until next time,
Happy tales to
you.
you.